All right, so prior to getting into chapter 12, Daniel touched upon the abomination in chapters 9 and 11, and it's going to be a focal point of chapter 12. So I'd like to take a day to read from an article on the Got Questions website that goes over what this abomination of desolation is. I think it's critical to understand this to help us put the puzzle piece together. All right. Jesus spoke of a coming abomination of desolation in the Olivet Discourse as he referenced a future event mentioned in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 through 16, Jesus says, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains." The word abomination means something that causes disgust or hatred, and desolation is a state of complete emptiness or destruction. Jesus warned that something or someone that people detested would stand in the temple someday. When that horror occurred, residents of Judea should seek cover without delay. Jesus referenced Daniel in his words in the Olivet Discourse. The prophet Daniel mentioned the abomination of desolation in 3 places. The first is from chapter 9, verse 27. "And he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate, until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate." And then we've got Daniel chapter 11, verse 31. "Forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices, and place there the abomination of desolation." And number 3, Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. "From the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days, which we'll elaborate on tomorrow." The wording of those verses in some translations indicates that the abomination of desolation is an object. In other translations, it appears to be a person. Regardless of whether the abomination of desolation is a person or a thing, Daniel predicted the following. Number 1, a future ruler will make a treaty with the people of Israel. Number 2, the terms of this treaty will be for a week, which the Hebrew language offers to be a period of 7 years. And by how things played out from the decree given to Nehemiah to rebuild the temple until Christ's triumphal entry, and the events described in the 70th week as yet future, this understanding of weeks makes the most sense. Number 3, midway through this time, the ruler will gather his troops and put an end to the sacrifices and offerings in the temple. Number 4, at that time, the ruler will desecrate the temple, setting up some type of sacrilegious object. And number 5, the desecration of the temple will continue until the judgment of God is finally meted out on the ruler and his followers. 1,290 days, or 3.5 years plus 1 month later, which it will be detailed in tomorrow's chapter. Daniel's prophecies about the abomination of desolation seem to have at least a partial fulfillment in 167 BC, when a Greek ruler by the name of Antiochus IV desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. Antiochus called himself Epiphanes, meaning illustrious one or God manifest. He set up an altar to Zeus over the altar of burnt offering, and he sacrificed a pig on the altar. Antiochus went even further in his atrocities, slaughtering a great number of the Jews and selling others into slavery. And he issued decrees forbidding circumcision and requiring Jews to sacrifice to pagan gods and eat pig meat. What Antiochus did certainly qualifies as an abomination, but it was not a complete fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. Antiochus Epiphanes did not enter a covenant with Israel for 7 years, for example. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus, speaking some 200 years after Antiochus's evil actions, spoke of Daniel's prophecy as having a still future fulfillment. The question then becomes, when, after Jesus' day, was the abomination of desolation prophecy fulfilled? Or are we still waiting for a future fulfillment? The preterist view is that Jesus' warning in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, concerned events leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. In this view, the Abomination of Desolation probably occurred during the Roman occupation of Jerusalem, when the Roman army brought their heathen images and standards into the temple courts. However, we at Got Questions take the futurist view, as do I, which sees the Abomination of Desolation prophecy as still future. In our view, Jesus was referring to the Antichrist, who in the end times will establish a covenant with Israel for 7 years and then break it by doing something similar to what Antiochus Epiphanes did in the temple. The sacrilegious object Jesus called the Abomination of Desolation could be the image of the beast that the Antichrist's right-hand man, the false prophet, will order to be set up and worshipped, mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, verse 14. Of course, for Matthew chapter 24, verse 15 to be yet future, the temple in Jerusalem will have to be rebuilt before the tribulation begins. And side comment here, if you research the rebuilding of the temple, you'll find that the Jews dedicated to do this are ready to go. They have all the artifacts collected and could get the temple built in a year's time or so. It is very possible that it could be built during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Or before. I personally don't see any obstacle to rebuilding the temple. God will get it done. All right. Finally, those who are alive during the tribulation should be watchful and recognize that the breaking of the covenant with Israel and the Abomination of Desolation will herald the beginning of the worst 3.5 years in the history of the world. Matthew chapter 24, verse 21 says, "For then there will be a great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will again." And Luke chapter 21, verse 36 states, "Be always on the watch, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man." So that's it, you guys. All right, chapter 12 tomorrow. We'll dive more into it. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.